Welcome to another episode of Jim's Llama Garden. Okay, so that's that end completely on now, so that's basically the back gable end. So we've got all of these two bolted in at the top, obviously the bracket in the middle, and then it's all bolted across the bottom. Now obviously this is still sort of a bit wobbly this way, because obviously we need the top piece going in there just to hold it all, all that in place. But that's basically fastened, that's not going to go anywhere. So what we need to do now is in exactly the same way, do this front part. So in exactly the same way you need to put a nut and bolt in that hole there, which is where the first piece is going to go. A nut and bolt in that second piece there. Now obviously again you've got a left and a right, so we can do these ones from the outside. So obviously that's this side, so all you need to do is before you put it on, you need a nut and bolt. I only need one, so I've got both there. So the first thing to do is just run that down the strip like that to about somewhere like there, and then looking at that bolt there at the bottom, so just drop that over the top like that. Then that bolt there goes into this hole like that. Then all you need to do is just run the nut on here like that. There you go, and then just tighten up the nut at the bottom, and then that's that piece in. Exactly the same thing we need to do now on the other side, and then we'll be ready to put in the pieces that go up and down the roof. So obviously that'll just bolt in here again, and then sort of drop it in there. So then and then do obviously the other side, and then the only bit difference here is obviously that piece that's there and that piece that's there is the effectively where the door goes. Now on this side they are slightly different, because you've got like a piece that comes out, I'll show you in a moment, that bolts in there and in there, and then but basically that's the door frame, which is only glazed on one side, so they're a slightly different shape, but the two pieces that go up and down there are identical from the two sides. They're effectively, the parts are interchangeable. So all I need to do now is get the other one of these on this side here, which is this one here, and then I can start to put the roof in on this side as well. Okay, so you can now see that this end is in as well. So in exactly the same way, I bolted in the pieces here and here, then put in the two struts, obviously bolted them through these brackets now, so all that's in now. This is all bolted in hard, so it's exactly the same as the back, apart from these two sort of middle pieces now. Now obviously what's going to go here now is the door frame and the track for the door to slide on, so obviously that'll be in the sort of the next section. But what we can do now is to get in the piece along the top, which will then sort of bring it all together and make it all sturdy. So that's the gable end from this side completely in. That's all bolted up nice and tight. What you can do now is, as soon as you've got it all square, what you can do is tighten all the bolts up, and so all this is now nice and rigid. And then obviously this side as well, because all of this is square, we can tighten up all the bolts on here, so this is all ready to go, and we can start to put the other pieces in. But at this time, now you know that everything's all straight, what you can do is you can go around and tighten all the bolts up, because the greenhouse is now pretty much in one piece. Okay, so we're now ready to put the top bar in, which basically goes from the middle of the roof over there to the middle of this bit here. Now, I will say that these can be a little bit tricky, and if you're going to bang your head, you know, if anything's going to fall on your head, this will be the opportunity now to get somebody else to come and help you, because it's well worth you, you know, not getting banged on the head. But basically, the top piece, which is this piece I've got on my hand here, is kind of that section like that. Now, these two flat pieces here will go underneath where the two nuts are there. So if I can just put this in place, basically, if you look at it like that, those two bits at the bottom there actually go in to the underneath of there. Now, the only way to do this is to get up there. You need something to stand on, obviously, and what you'll need to do is tap the outside of it onto this. They are typically quite stiff. Now, the only other thing you can do is loosen off these two bolts here, just to loosen this up a bit. But I've found it's better to leave that in and just tap that onto the end of each side. But most certainly you need to be standing on something to do this properly. So last night it rained, so as you can see it's quite muddy in here. So what I'm going to do is just put a plate down so the stool doesn't sink into the ground, and I'll tap the two ends in, and then I'll show you the next step what to do. Okay, as you can see, I've now got the top piece in now, so I can just, if I can show you. Obviously, if the ground's muddy like this, put a plate down or something so you can actually get onto a stand, so you're not sort of sinking in the ground. So all I did basically was push this part into between the two sort of cross members, this one and this one, and then what you need to do then to lock it in place to stop it coming back out, as you can see, this is locked in place by this sort of piece here will rest on the top of there, and also this piece will rest on the top of there. Now, this is why it's important to get this plate in first, because this plate is holding these two pieces together, and these two pieces together is what's holding this up. So it's important that you get this plate in first, which is why I explained to you to do that. So as soon as you've got it in place, what you need to do is the two nuts that I told you to run on before you put the pieces up, this one and this one, all you need to do is loosen them off slightly and then run it up. Obviously I've already run this one up. As soon as you've got it run up into place like that, what you need to do is get your spanner and make sure that these are nice and tight. Now, these four nuts here are quite possibly the most important four nuts on the greenhouse. Now, if these nuts do come undone, basically the middle part of the roof is going to drop out, and obviously that's the last thing you want to happen. So most certainly when you're doing this, be careful, because obviously if this comes out, it's going to drop, and it'll be coming from around 8 foot in the air. So obviously, you know, you don't want that not knocking on your head. Right. So as soon as you got the first one in, I've already got one in the other side, just loosely, as you can see, that bolt there at the end. So that's holding it into there, and it's resting on the top. So this is now sort of fixed into position. All you need to do now is just get the second one, just loosen that off slightly, and you will need to run the nut off a little bit, because obviously it's going to go over the plate like that. Push that, I need to loosen it off slightly more, push that into place like that. I'm just loosening the nut off so it'll go over. That's it. You might need to give it a bit of a encouraging tap like that. Now, as soon as you've got it in place like that, what you need to do is again tighten it up like that. Push it up as far as you can get it like that. As soon as it's in place, then obviously with your spanner again, just make sure that that's nice and tight. Now, this is one instant where a hexagonal nut does help, to be honest with you, because you can get a socket on this. But again, what you don't want to do is over tighten these bolts. In the construction of this greenhouse, I have actually broken two bolts by over tightening them, so it's easily done, and I've done this. This is probably the 5th aluminium greenhouse that I've built. So, you know, even though I've done it before, it is easily done. So all I'm doing is just tightening that up like that. That's nice, and okay, that's tight enough. So that's now locked in position there. Now all you need to do is go over to the other side. Hang on, just too quick. Right, go to the side. As you can see, I've got that one already sort of in place, which is stopping it from coming out. I just need to quickly nick that up, so that's nice and tight. And then just like the other side, I'm just going to undo that, bring that up into place, and then that'll be the top piece in place. As soon as this is now bolted in, what we can do now is start to put the roof pieces in, which I'll show you in a moment. Okay, so that's the top piece all bolted in, as you can see, all nicely tight, bolted there. So this is all nice and firm now, and as you can see there, those two are nicely tight in there. So that's the top piece on. So now what we need to do is run the glazing bars from there down to there. Now, in exactly the same way as I did the bottom of these glazing bars, what you need to do is just run a nut into the two holes at the top and the two holes there, with you know, the nut and the bolt. And what you're going to do is push the glazing bar onto there, and then lock it in at the bottom with another nut and bolt. So all of the glazing bars will be the same length. So you'll have glazing bars that look something like this. So all you need to do now is, and I may or may not be able to do this with the camera now, but basically what you need to do is put the glazing bar in at the top, exactly like I did the other one. Obviously this is not working with the camera. Just okay, so that's the glazing bar in at the top. As you can see, the bolt's now trapped inside there. Now this will then drop down onto here, and as you can see, it corresponds with this hole here. So all you need is to get yourself a bolt like that. Sorry, I can just put the bolt on like that, and then all you need to do is then just drop that bolt into the hole like that, and then if you run your nut on the bottom of there now, like that, then that'll bolt the glazing bar down, and obviously your pieces of glass are going to go between between this piece and that piece. Then all you need to do then is tighten up the top. Now what you do need to do is decide which side of the greenhouse you're going to have the opening window. Now our prevailing winds come from this direction. I don't know if you noticed on this greenhouse, the two opening windows, if I just show you, they're actually on the other side. The reason being that so if we have any wind, you know, it's going to be on the opposite side. So those are the two opening windows there and there. So as the wind comes this way, it's not going to catch the windows. So I'm going to be putting onto this one the opening window on this side. So what I need to do, obviously I've just shown you how to put that on, but what I will be doing, and what you'll need to do, is get yourself another bolt, and then put another bolt into this piece before you bolt it down on here, because what there will be is a cross member to go from this one to one that will be here, which will hold the bottom bar where the window will basically shut onto it. So before you put it in, what you need to do is put a spare bolt in there. Now there are other ways of doing this. These bolts come in two different versions. You get the square bolts like that, and you also get the bolts that are like that. Now these bolts are designed so that they go into the framework afterward, so you can sort of put it in like that and then just twist it, and then that'll lock inside the frame. I think these are a really good idea if you're going to put up things like shelves, or if you're going to put up, you know, something, you know, I don't know, in the roof that's temporary to hold some bamboo canes or something like that. These are ideal. I would not recommend you use these for any structural parts of the greenhouse. You're much better off using the you know, the full square bolt like this. The reason being is that if these were not quite tight, and it managed to rotate round, then it would come out of the frame again. If you've got one of these square bolts, as soon as that square bolt's in the framework, it isn't going to come out. And I think anything that's structural, or anything that's you know, holding glass up, I think it's much safer to put one of these in to the framework as you're putting it up, and then you guarantee that there's going to be nothing no problems moving forward. So what you need to do obviously is just loosen that off again and then put another nut and bolt in there ready for the cross member, which will go across here, which I'll show you in a moment, for the bottom part of the opening window. So I'll just do that now, and I'll put in the other glazing bars as I've just shown you with this one, and then I'll show you the next step, which is to put in the crossbar here for the skylight. Okay, so that's all the roof bars in. As you can see, bolted in at the bottom, just like I just showed you, nice and tight at the bottom. Now, the one thing that concerns me, and this is going to be one of the modifications, the roof will move slightly. Now, obviously, when the glass is in it, that's going to hold it a lot more firmer. But because we get such horrific wind up here, if you look on this greenhouse, as you can see, there's this piece going up, which basically stiffens the roof and stops it moving backwards and forwards. Now, this greenhouse has actually got the holes in place here and here to put those in, so there's, you know, you can put like another piece of this from here across to here. Now, I can retrospectively do this, but before I put the glass in, I'm going to see if I can at least get two in, just to stiffen it up. But as I say, you know, when the glass goes in, that's going to stiffen it up anyway. But I would much rather rely on the frame to sort of keep it stiff than you know, than the glass. But anyway, so that's all the framework in. And as I say, on this side, this will be where the opening window is. So you need to put two nuts and bolts here, just loosely, and obviously you're going to take the nut back off to put the strip across from there to there. There's another nut and bolt there ready to go. So I'll put that bit in next. But that's effectively the roof, all of the roof section in now. So it is now really starting to resemble a greenhouse, as you can see. Just step back here a little bit. As you can see, you know, apart from the door frame that needs to go in, it's pretty much complete. Okay, so the next part is to put in the bar across there for the opening window. So if I can just show you the one in here. So all it is this is the actual piece here. So it's got your two locks there to put the piece in. So if I just put this down a second. So it's basically this piece here. So when you've got your window open, you've got somewhere to sort of lock the window open, and all it does is just bolts into the frame here and here. These are the two bolts that we've already put in, and then basically the window shuts down sort of on top of that to make the seal, and it also stops this from bearing down on this piece of glass here. So if this ever were to slam, it just slam against the frame and not the glass and basically break the glass. Okay, so to put this piece in the new greenhouse, this is the bar. So we've already got the bolts in place here and here. So all we need to do basically is that's going to fit into the greenhouse like that, going between the two bars. Now this is going to have to move up and down dependent on, obviously I'm going to put the window in at the top, so I won't know exactly where to put this until the window's in place. So all you need to do basically is to undo these nuts and then bolt in the piece across. So I'll just do that now and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so that's the piece bolted, and as you can see I've just loosely run the nuts up there and there. So this is going to have to be adjusted up and down when I put this top window in. So I've just put it in loosely now so it's in place, and then I can just undo these two nuts, move it up and down till it's in the right position, then I can just nick the nuts up, and then that's the final piece of the roof on this side. Okay, so now you've got the structure together, before you start putting the door on, and this is the reason why I've not put it on yet, what you need to do is go around and check that the whole thing is square, and I'll just show you how to do that now. But what I will admit is when I put this up, I actually made an error. These parts here were bolted into this nut here, where in fact they should have been bolted to this lower one here, and what that caused is the whole sort of greenhouse to be squashed up like that, which has caused basically the roof to be slightly higher than it should be. Now you don't know this until you start to offer up pieces of glass and you can see if the greenhouse is perfectly square. So what you need to do is, with a greenhouse like this, you may have just 2x2s in like this, or what you might have is two sizes like this one has got, and well, both greenhouses have got. And this is a piece of glass which is 2 foot long, and it's about 14 inches wide. So what you need to do is put the piece of glass, just offer it up into the framework like that, and what you should see is relatively the same distance all the way around. And obviously what you should be able to do is sort of slide that piece of glass right the way up to there. As you see, obviously you can't see the glass that well, but the edge of the glass is kind of here, and that it's, you know, equal distance between each side, and then do exactly the same thing on here. So obviously that fits in the bottom there nice and tight, yeah, and then you can move it up, and then all the way up to there as far as you can go, that it's equal distance all the way around. And then obviously when we get to this middle part, now this middle part was is 2 foot wide, so I'm just turning the piece of glass around. Right, so now I've got it, you know, sort of 2 foot across. What you should be able to do is put the glass in to the frame like that. That sits nice in at the bottom there, and then I should be able to drag that piece of glass up, and then that should fit all the way up till we get to the top like that, where the glass has still got about 5mm gap either side, and it fits nicely all the way up to the top like that. And then just go around the greenhouse like that. Now, when I checked this earlier, I wasn't filming at the time, when I put the piece of glass in here, I could tell that the frame was going over slightly to one side, and when I measured this one, it was actually too narrow at the top. And what had happened, if I just explain, just put this glass down, what had happened was, because the whole roof was further down than it should have been, I'd got this piece actually bolted in here, so this one was too narrow, and because these holes are so close together, it's easily done. But what you should have, if the frame's all together, is all of the joints, like here, should be nice and tight. This was slightly out, I'd got about 5mm of gap here when it was there, and then you should have no gap at the bottom here as well. But all I've needed to do is basically loosen the bolts off again, and then what I've done is I've bolted in, taking it from there to there. I've just noticed that bolt is actually, that nut's actually loose, I need to tighten that. All I've done is loosened off the nuts, moved this from there to there, and then obviously loosened off these nuts so the whole thing would move, and now it's nice and solid again. And exactly the same thing at the front here. All I needed to do was loosen this nut off and the bottom none, this one, and obviously take it out to there and move it to there, and then just put the nuts back in. That's another one that needs tightening, and then just put it in the right one there, and exactly the same of course on here. I've just basically moved this down from there to there, and just that much distance there will make a massive difference to the frame. But as I say, as you go around, what you should see is the joints nice and tight in there, like there, and then also at the bottom there shouldn't be any gap. If there is a gap, that kind of tells you that everything's you know, everything's okay, if everything's got nice, you know, sort of narrow gaps all the way around. Right, so now we've done that, and I know for definite, I've gone around and checked with a piece of glass that the glass will fit all the way around, the side walls, each gable end. I know everything's straight, and I know everything's going to fit in. Now I can put the door frame in. Okay, so the door frame consists of a piece that goes across the top, which is basically what the door runs up and down on. So you've got like wheels at the top here and here. So that'll roll backwards and forwards like that. So this piece of metal here is taking a lot of weight, and what I suggest is this is the piece you put in first, and then put in these side bits secondly, because this is the bit that you need to get right. Now obviously this is where this greenhouse and this greenhouse differ. This greenhouse, if you look, this running mechanism is actually bolted in to this down piece here, there and there. With this greenhouse, it's slightly different. It's the same theory, but this is the running bar here. This has all been cleaned up. I put fresh bolts in there and there. This bolt here I may well replace after, but that's basically going to sit in this middle hole here, and that middle hole there. So as you can see on this side here, that hole there that's in the middle of the screen now, and that hole there basically marries up with those two holes like that, and then that's the rail that the door's going to slide on in exactly the same way as that one. So what I do suggest is this piece of aluminium is a lot thicker, as you can see. It's a lot thicker than any other piece of aluminium on the greenhouse. That's for a very good reason, because the door is quite heavy, and it's also going to carry, you know, when it's got its glass in, it's not only heavy but it also moves. So what I suggest you do, if you are doing a second-hand greenhouse like I am, the bolts that hold all of this together, the door mechanism, have got to be absolutely right. As you can see, I've put brand new bolts in here. I've taken it all apart, cleaned it. I've put brand new bolts in here, and I'll be putting brand new bolts in between this piece and here, because obviously this is holding a lot of weight in the door. Now, greenhouse bolts, you know, you can buy them. They're around sort of £3 for the pack like this off the internet. I strongly recommend for this part you use new bolts. So what I'll do now is I'll bolt the door in, and I can show you what it looks like. Okay, so as soon as you've got the door runner bolted in, so here and here, the next thing to do is, what you need to do is support this end of it. Now, as soon as the weight of the door goes on, obviously as you open it, the wheels will roll along and get to this bit here, and that'll tend to go down, which will stress the frame. So what you typically have is a piece like this, which fits in between the back of there and the framework here. So I'll just put that in now. But basically, what you typically have is a spacer like that, which bolts into there, and then it also bolts at the top. Now, I'm not going to put the final bolt in at the top, because as soon as the final bolt's in, it'll stick out like that, which will stop the door from coming off the roller when I open it. So for now, what I'm going to do is just put a quick nut and bolt through there just to hold that in place whilst I'm messing about with the door, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Okay, so that's that bolted in there, and it bolts through the top kind of like that. Now obviously what will happen now is as the door opens, it'll get to this point here and stop, which will basically mean that the door's kind of sitting in that area there. So that, as the weight of the door comes now over here, that will take the strength, but I am going to change the design of this because I think I can improve on this quite easily. I don't really like the fact that that's like there, because that could snag on the glass, and also I think if this is moved over and bolted to that back plate there, it'll actually strengthen this a bit more. So I am going to change the design of that slightly, so I'm going to have a think about that and change that, but for now that'll most certainly do to hold the door. So the only thing which is left now on the main frame is to put the actual door frame in. So that's sort of quite easy. The door frame, as I explained earlier, is slightly different from the rest. The actual section of it kind of looks like that, and all we need to do is basically bolt that in at the bottom, which actually goes through the same bolt as this member here. Bolts in there, and then that will go in to that hole there and bolt in there. But before I do that, if you look at this sort of part of it here, if I just turn it over, you'll be able to see this part here. There should be a seal that goes in there, which kind of sticks out over here. So as the door goes over it seals it. Now, when I cleaned the frame, I took the old seal out because it was absolutely perished. So what I'm going to do is now fit a new seal into this groove here before I fit it on, because as soon as I fitted it on, it's going to be considerably harder to fit the seal in. So if you are recycling a greenhouse like this and you're changing any of the seals around the door, it's well worth doing that well before you fit the door frame to the rest of the greenhouse, because then what will happen is as soon as you've fitted it, it's going to be much harder for you to slide the new seal in there. So I'll just do that next. Okay, so just to finish this part off before we move on, all I've done here is I've changed these bolts round so they're now pointing up. Put this plate in here, and I've just put two glazing clips, W clips in there, just hold it in. So that's basically just the top corner now finished. Now we've got the door frame in. So that's what it looks like. So all we need to do now is put the down pieces once we've got the ceiling, and then we can fit the door to the greenhouse. So I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Lemon Garden.